Hi, everybody. I hope that you are all doing well. So I've been sitting on this conversation for a little bit and kind of, I don't want to say stewing over it, but thinking of how to go about presenting it because it's important and I want to make sure that there is not a misunderstanding here. The Abrahamic Covenant is still in full force today, just as enforceable as it was in Genesis 12 when it is given, or when it was given. It is as enforceable today as it was then, and it will be in the future also. As we go through the book of Galatians, and this is something that I am going to be discussing when we get to chapter 3, it says that the Abrahamic promises were not disannulled. The Abrahamic covenant is full of promises. It's Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him for righteousness. And as a result, those who are of faith are blessed with faithful Abraham. Now, the difference is that the old covenant was not of faith. The law was not of faith. So it couldn't save people. The only thing that can save people is faith. The same faith in the Old Testament, the same faith in the New Testament. In the Old Testament was forward looking to the promise of the Redeemer. In the New Testament, it is of the Redeemer himself, since he has now come. But it's always been faith, forward looking to Christ and or in Christ once he came. And because the Abrahamic covenant was a faith-based thing, Abraham believed God and it was counted to him for righteousness. And so God affirmed the parts of the covenant with Abraham. First of all, the land promise, and then the natural seed promise that Abraham would have natural descendants that numbered as the sands of the sea and as the stars of the sky. And the third and separate is that the Redeemer would come through Abraham's line. This is more fully explained in Galatians 3, that the Redeemer coming through Abraham's line is the faith that we need to have, and that everyone can become a son of Abraham through the spiritual seed, which is Christ, not on account of being a natural descendant, but on account of becoming part of the spiritual seed, who is Christ. So that is pretty much what Galatians 3 talks about. What it makes a point of saying is that the old covenant did not disannul the promises given to Abraham by God through the Abrahamic covenant. The old covenant was the only conditional covenant in the Old Testament. In Exodus 19, God was going to covenant with the people on Sinai, and he said, if you do this, then I will do this. They didn't do that. So he kept punishing them for their disobedience and their lack of being able to keep the law until such a time as Christ came, who then fulfilled all the works of the law, put it away, and now we're under a new covenant through Christ. But that did not disannul the promises given to Abraham through faith. Eventually, there is going to be from Israel a Messiah ruling from the throne of David in Jerusalem. In Israel, it will have its full borders as given in the Old Testament and given in Ezekiel, when it's finally parceled to the 12 tribes in the millennial kingdom. This is not something that's not going to happen because the Abrahamic covenant just isn't a thing anymore. The reason that I'm bringing this up is because I got some comments talking essentially about how the people in the land aren't really Jews, and they're essentially the people who are creating everything evil that's going on in the world, and how the NWO is coming through them, and how the vaccine and the mark of the beast are going to be coming through them. And I'm like, dude, the mark of the beast isn't even going to be implemented until the second half of the 70th week, and the Jews will have fled by then. And there's going to be like an angel flying through the midst of the heaven warning people not to take it before it's even a thing to take, because if they're not told not to do it, then they can't be punished for doing it, and clearly they're going to be punished for doing it. but they're not even going to be doing it until after the remnant flees. So how could the people fleeing be responsible for bringing it about? Like that is a contradictory thing, like all over the place. And to think that the people not residing in the land are not the people who belong in the land is also false. You go to the Old Testament prophets in Ezekiel 36 and 37, they talk about in preparation for the people returning, which happens to be post-World War II, which was a reparation for like the slaughter of 6 million of their people. Like, how could you not make amends to these people and give them back their covenanted land, which is covenanted by God to Abraham? So to say that they don't belong in the land is like something I don't ever want to hear again. More to the point, they were prophesied that the land would start producing in expectation of the return of the people, Ezekiel 36. And then the prophecy of the dry bones, which is in Ezekiel 37. And then the next prophecy that is given is Ezekiel 38 and 39, which is specifically related to Israel and the God of Israel on behalf of Israel, demonstrating himself mighty and great and overt in preparation for the 70th week, which is Israel-centric because it's part of an Old Testament prophecy regarding the land and people of Israel. So to say that they don't belong there is false. To say that they aren't who they say they are is false. Like, I'm not offended by that because I'm not a Jew and I'm not in Israel, so I don't have the right to be offended by that. But I literally hated reading that. Like it with every part of my being, it like burned. I hated it. So hopefully, if there was some kind of misinformation about who's there and who belongs there and why they're there, and the fact that they belong there and have every right to be there, that has been clarified. Galatians 3. Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He said, not unto seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ. So this is the adoption into God's family, becoming sons of Abraham through Christ, which was the third of 3 promises given in the Abrahamic Covenant. So you say the land promise goes away. Well, then that would mean that the spiritual seed promise would have to go away too. Because if you can't trust one part of it, then you can't trust any of it. So if one part of it holds true, which is that our faith is through the spiritual seed, which is Christ, and we're adopted in Abraham's family via Christ, who is the spiritual seed promised to Abraham, then you have to keep intact the natural seed promise and the land covenant promise also. It says, and this I say that the covenant, which was confirmed before of God in Christ, talking about the Abrahamic covenant, before. So it says, and this I say that the covenant that was confirmed before of God in Christ, the law, which was 430 years after. So the Abrahamic covenant was confirmed in Genesis 12, was confirmed in Genesis 15 unilaterally by God, unconditional promise. He said, I'm going to do this. So it's never going to go away. Came 430 years before the conditional covenant. It says, cannot disannul, that it should make the promise of none effect. So the old covenant, which came 430 years after the Abrahamic covenant, cannot disannul the promises. Abrahamic covenant is still intact, which includes the land promise. The people that are there belong there. They are the people who will eventually comprise the remnant who is saved by the grace of God to come out the other side of the 70th week and to repopulate the earth after the millennial kingdom, or repopulate the earth during the millennial kingdom, which will be headquartered in Jerusalem, Israel. Obviously, it's important to the end times, and the people there are no less important to the end times, and they are what everything centers around. So please do not ever think, and specifically do not ever say that the people who are there do not belong there and that they did not deserve to be given the land, because that is literally completely opposed to what we learn about in Genesis 12 and 15 and 17 and 22. It is an unconditional promise by God to Abraham and Abraham's descendants, specifically the ones through Christ, that they will inhabit and repopulate the land of Israel according to the borders given Moses. And we see this in Ezekiel. I will be back to go through the rest of Galatians. I just wanted to address that. I'll see you guys later.